I'm totally supportive in creating a great place for everybody, but I just think we have to be cautious that it's not going to violate religious freedoms and freedom of speech. An example of a violation of freedom of speech, I recently learned from one of my kids in high school that a word that I regularly use that I think is a regular word is apparently on the don't use list. So I learned that from my high school children, which is the word means slow. It's in the dictionary. It literally, retardant, slows down fires. And I did not realize, no, you cannot control my speech, Mr. Raphael. So you cannot. I can use the word. Okay, so this is one of those violations of freedom of speech that really concern me. So I really think there needs to be a lot more caution placed on specific parameters so that you respect those other constitutional rights. Thank you.
That parent at a school board meeting in Minnesota strolled off after her ignorant rant about giving her kids the freedom to use the R word at school, because there's such a thing as fire retardants. She's the kind of parent the superintendent of Oklahoma schools has left supporting him.
The question, where is your authority specifically coming from? As you know, thousands of people, including parents who signed a petition to impeach you with more than 14,000 signatures at last check, say this is government overreach and you're taking control away from local parents, local school boards and parents over their kids. What do you say to that, and where is your authority coming from to enforce this prayer video to be played in schools?
I appreciate you pushing that left-wing narrative here, but here's the reality.
It's not a left-wing narrative. I'm literally talking about a petition that parents have signed that's gotten more than 14,000 signatures that have raised this issue.
It's pretty clear on religious liberty. The Constitution's crystal clear on religious liberty. I know the left doesn't want our kids to know anything about the role the Bible played in American history. They don't want any of our kids to know about the Constitution. Our religious liberties are protected, and the left has driven the Bible out of schools, driven prayer out of schools, and everything in education's gotten worse since. Before we had a federal Department of Education and we had the Bible and prayer in school, guess what? We were leading the free world. This was the greatest country in the world, and we have seen every statistic has gotten worse since the creation of the Federal Department of Education and the Supreme Court pulled the Bible and prayer out of schools.
Okay, pause for reality-based purposes. Because Oklahoma, the state that Ryan Walters runs the education system for, ranks 49th out of 50 states in that department. But let's listen to more of his unearned confidence about why.
First of all, the Constitution is not crystal clear on that. It doesn't have God in it. There is this establishment clause in the First Amendment, which the Supreme Court has routinely said it requires the separation of church and state and public schools. There are many cases hold on, I'm speaking. There are many cases where the Supreme Court has routinely ruled on that. You went after woke teachers and the radical left in your announcement for attacking religious liberty, but your critics are saying that by requiring Bibles in every classroom and requiring this prayer video, you're trying to impose your religion on students in violation of the Establishment Clause. They say the Constitution, scholars say the Constitution is crystal clear on freedom of religion, not enforcing one religion, your religion, on students. What do you say?
Look, CNN doesn't have to like it. Left-wing activists don't have to like it.
I'm just talking about facts. It's not my opinion.
Document. The Bible is a historical document. You can't rewrite history, okay? The reality is the Bible was what drove so many of the consequential events in American history. Why'd the Pilgrims come to America? Why in the world did Abraham Lincoln mention God and God's providence in so many of his speeches? How do you explain Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail where he goes through biblical examples if the left continues to censor the Bible from our history classes? Listen, the left doesn't have to like it. They can be offended by it, but we've got to teach history to our young people. To make this country great again, President Trump has a clear mandate. Our kids have to understand what made America great in the first place. And obviously the Bible, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence are indispensable in understanding the story of America.
Weird that among all the biblical history Walters is upset about schools not teaching, he's got no problem with the right-wing push to eliminate or sanitize our savage history of enslavement.
We are required to teach slavery, the post-Reconstruction and segregation, civil rights. Those are core parts of American history that should be taught, but it should also be taught accurately. For example, the 1619 Project is a CRT version of history. It was the American Revolution that caused people to question slavery. No one had questioned it before we decided as Americans that we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights and that we are all created equal. Then that birthed abolition movements. You can't teach that the foundations of our country were somehow evil. Our founders pledged their lives, fortune, sacred honor, and they put a marker in the sand. Not everything lived up to it right away, of course not, but every major movement in our country's history has gone right back to those core principles.
So it's pretty clear the reasons guys like DeSantis and Walters are vehemently against teaching the evils of our history. They're worried that their indoctrination will suffer and somehow make Americans hate the country. They're much more comfortable with students being forced to watch state-sanctioned prayers that make Donald Trump some kind of deity.
We've also seen patriotism mocked and a hatred for this country pushed by woke teachers' unions. We will not tolerate that in any school in Oklahoma. We want our students to be patriotic. We want our students to love this country. And we want all students' religious liberty to be protected. I will now say a prayer. And to be clear, students, you don't have to join. But if you so wish, I'm going to go ahead and pray. Dear God, thank you for all the blessings you've given our country. I pray for our leaders to make the right decisions. I pray in particular for President Donald Trump and his team as they continue to bring about change to the country. I pray for our parents, teachers, and kids that they get the best education possible and live high-quality lives. I also pray that we continue to teach love of country to our young people and that our students understand what makes America great and that they continue to love this country. Amen.
Well, luckily, the state's attorney general's office rejected Walter's sycophantic prayer video that he claimed could force schools and parents to watch. It's telling that while they claim to want to give parents a voice in the education of their children, they have no interest in the majority of parents that don't want Walters indoctrinating them with his bastardized version of Christianity. He's just jazzed up because his Lord has promised to eliminate the Department of Education.
And what I'm going to do, one of the first acts, and this is where I need an Elon Musk, I need somebody that has a lot of strength and courage and smarts. I want to close up Department of Education. You know, I'm going to take the Department of Education, close it in Washington, let the states run their own education. Very important. Because we spend more money per pupil than any other nation in the world by far, and yet we're ranked at the bottom of every list. So, you know the expression, what the hell do you have to lose, right?
Well, considering the states with the lowest rankings in education and the highest marks in their dependency on the federal government are generally run by Republican governors and also tend to vote for Trump, well, they have a lot more to lose. But he promised to somehow stop the zero number of trans kids and adults to walk into girls' bathrooms and locker rooms from doing it anymore, so they trust him with the keys to their existence. They have no idea that if he and his buddies in the new Department of Government Efficiency gain the ability to eliminate these offices, their states have no plan or ability to take over and run things that benefit their constituents.
Are you expecting to close down entire agencies like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example? Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So yes, we expect all of the above. And I think people will be surprised by, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given us.
No, they'll also be surprised by how quickly this plan will devolve into incompetence and extreme deficiencies in how many aspects of education is delivered and funded, depending on each state's reliance on these federal dollars. So, as usual, the most vulnerable programs that support the most vulnerable students and districts would suffer the most. And have any of these supporters asked what they think Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are planning to do with the resources and the responsibilities that would need to be spread to other agencies? But do they know that they need congressional approval to get this done? And do they realize there are plenty of House and Senate members that don't want the heat that would come with their decision to dismantle the department? No, they don't think about that stuff. They'd rather listen to a bunch of rich guys that are wealthy enough to separate their children from the educational system that the majority of Americans' kids go through. So, like with mass deportation, this is another rally promise that's unlikely to become reality. They just don't really know it yet.
I would like about some of these departments 60, 70, 80% cut. Some of them, like Department of Education, they need to send that money to the states and shut them down. They're worse than the mob. They take billions of dollars out of our education system, and I guarantee you there's not one single bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. in the Department of Education that's taught a kid in Tennessee how to read or write or do arithmetic. They're worse than the mob. The Lord only takes 10% with tithe, and these folks take a heck of a lot more.
It should be done to protect people like your little girl from being safe at school.
Well, we homeschool her, but that's our decision.